The past was insane. Whenever someone brings up the past, the first thing that comes to my mind is the 90s. I'm gonna be honest with you, the 90s were weird, man. So let's start from the beginning, shall we? The year is 1990, my parents are both in school, and the Hubble telescope launched into space for the first time on April 24th, allowing us to capture photos like this, and even this, all from the Great Blue. More high quality than ever before. And it also took this historically iconic picture of the Pillars of Creation, which literally everybody has seen before. So yeah, pretty good way to begin a decade, I suppose. I mean, it's certainly better than Australia catching on fire or a pandemic starting, you know? Looking a few months back into 1990, Nelson Mandela was released from prison in February, which would go on a few decades later to become completely forgotten. And now it's used as a term for a psychological phenomenon that was popularized by TikTok, which makes you question literally everything you remember. People literally thought this man died in jail, but no, he got let out at the beginning of the decade. Also, Gregor Simpson was never real. You didn't fool anyone. Speaking of The Simpsons, the show didn't exactly start in the 1990s per se, but it would be a crime not to mention how much of an icon of 90s culture this yellow family truly is. Also, they were really good back then. Oh boy, do you remember that? On a more minor chord, however, in August of 1990, the Persian Gulf War took place, which only lasted a year, however. So obviously not everything about this first year was truly all that perfect. For more science, however, on the 1st of October 1990, the Human Genome Project began, marking a 13-year-long research project that looked into mapping, identifying, and sequencing all the genes of a human genome. So that marks most of 1990. As of 1991... two of my favourite albums were released in this very year, just months apart. 28th of February marked the end of the Persian Gulf War, also the end of February. In June, Pinatubo in the Philippines erupts, killing 847 people. And being the first eruption I learnt of, aside from Pompeii, it got me fascinated by the dark yet tragic beauty of volcanoes. It also had such an impact that it dropped global temperatures by 1.5 degrees Celsius. Also around this time, Sega came out with a game with one of my childhood heroes, Sonic the Hedgehog, which was one of the only times in history that Sega did what Nintendo didn't. September 1991 marked one of the most iconic releases in music history, Nirvana's Nevermind. One of my favourite albums as a Nirvana fan. With tracks such as Come As You Are, Lithium, In Bloom, Something in the Way, and even if it is too overplayed, Teen Spirit. I mean, what do you expect? Of course they would blow up in popularity and sell 30 million copies worldwide. Kurt Cobain just stuck out to kids at the time as a voice for all their apathy and rage. This moment marked a time in history where I want to say the whole edgy teenager or even emo stereotypes began, which would also be true considering how Korn and Slipknot were the thing in the 90s, but that's for later. Side note, my favourite song off this album is Drain You, which also just so happened to be Kurt's favourite. Grunge is now where it never wanted to be. The mainstream. Funnily enough, not long after the release of Nevermind was another favourite album of mine. An album released by Irish UK-based band My Bloody Valentine, which I have no shame in calling my guilty pleasure at full volume. It introduced a unique style of music to the world, one that had been criticised time and time again to the point where critics even gave it a name. Shoegaze. To describe shoegaze and its history, I can summarise it down to Cocteau Twins, Jesus and the Mary Chain, and later MBV and Slowdive. So, basically, guitar pedals exist, and so does LSD. So why not get massively high and play guitar with as many reverb, flanger, distortion, delay, and crunch pedals as possible, and just see how it sounds? You got that? Okay, cover your ears. And with that, 2 years of bleeding ears, tinnitus, screwing your own record label to get exactly the sound you want in production, one of the best albums to grace the guitar was born. Which I then ruined by turning emo in 2022. Sadly, the music world was left with Freddie Mercury, the rock legend, dying of HIV in November. A real tragedy as he never got to finish that one song he was working on. I would just like to say, on behalf of writing one of the best songs in history, rest in peace. Overall, 1991, a pretty good year. So let's just see what happens in 1992. Okay, 1992 is quite a hard year to define in comparison to the other years, but here's a basic rundown of the events that went on. In February, Jeffrey Dahmer is determined guilty of, well,
advertiser-friendly initiatives.
Apple and Microsoft had a little feud going on in 1988, and only as of April 1992 were they actually thrown out of court. And funnily enough, in April as well, Disneyland Paris opens. A glorious moment for us Europeans who have no Disney World. Also in April yet again are the Los Angeles riots. Weird Al Yankovic, the parody legend, hits number 35 on the charts with a song about Nirvana Smells Like Teen Spirit, in which he mocks the fact that Kurt Cobain has no clue what he's saying. In August, Hurricane Andrew hits Louisiana as a Category 3 storm. And on December 15th, 1992, Dre releases his first solo album, The Chronic, and the public goes wild. And that basically wraps up 92. And in comparison to the rest of the years, I actually had to look for the events in this one. On the contrary, 1993 saw quite a lot of things happen in comparison. Like in February, the iconic sci-fi film Groundhog Day comes out. And in March, Whitney Houston comes out with I Will Always Love You, a cover of a Dolly Parton song that not only has one of the best vocal performances of all time, but is also the longest running #1 single on the charts ever. On April 29th, an announcement is made by Her Majesty the Queen, rest in peace, that in that summer, Buckingham Palace would be open to the public for the first time. And I honestly thought that happened earlier. Music is doing really well this year. You have Smashing Pumpkins with Siamese Dream, Nirvana following up their pop-friendly Nevermind with an abrasive, loud, un-radio-friendly album In Utero, and Snoop Dogg made his first ever album Doggy Style. Yes, Doggy Style. Which makes listening to this album with a friend basically impossible. Especially considering how you would end up saying, wanna listen to Doggy Style? Whoa, back up there, buddy. Blur made Modern Life is Rubbish. They then went on to innovate Britpop for the rest of the decade. Slowdive made Slovakia Space Station, which, while despised at the time, has now become universally loved by the internet. But I'm getting sidetracked. In the exact same studio as Slowdive in Oxford takes place another new Oxford-based band. One that, while at this point was just imitating the grunge scene, would basically go on to become the best band in the entire world and change music for not only me, but literally the entire planet. Of course, I'm talking about Radiohead. As of right now, with their release of Pablo Honey, they're only getting attention from songs such as Everyone Can Play Guitar, probably because of this video. But just one song would later go on to haunt the band and overshadow everything they accomplished after it. It's a song we've all heard before, but it's far too overrated when this is the same band that made In Rainbows. That's all I'm saying. As far for movies, this year is also quite monumental, with films such as Nightmare Before Christmas and Jurassic Park, another favourite of mine. This year was certainly a step up from 92, but will 94 live up to its lofty heights? Okay, looking back now, a lot happened in 94. So let's speedrun this, shall we? Jeff Bezos starts Amazon. Mandela becomes the first black president of South Africa. Friends airs for the first time. But most unfortunately, Kurt Cobain shot himself in his home on April 5th, 1994. A tragic moment for music once again during a time where, let's be honest, everything was really golden. The voice of the kids and teens of that decade was just gone. The band of Nirvana at the height of their fame, especially after the MTV Unplugged show, which, looking back, was a literal funeral for Kurt, all gone. Dave Grohl and Chris Novoselic couldn't do it without Kurt, so they didn't. They quit the band. 1994 also saw a new genre step on the scene. Of course, I'm on about nu metal. It's safe to say that the band Korn was absolutely pioneering this genre, born with the band's first album, Korn, which featured edgy lyrics, heavy guitars, screamy vocals, a passionate anger, and was just overall relatable to people who were struggling, as most of the songs on the album were about personal struggles and suffering. Blind is probably my favourite track of theirs, but that's not saying I don't appreciate their more animalistic moments later on down the line.
Today we're going to be listening to Korn until they make some weird noises. Okay, let's do this.
I think this is also the same time that Weezer made the Blue album. But who am I? Single? My mum has also just brought to my attention that Donkey Kong Country came out around this year, and I love the music of Donkey Kong Country so much. 1994 was just an odd year. It had its major ups and major downs. But going into 95, people still had some hope for what was to come.